Rav Jesse, thank you, and thank all of you for coming, because we opened B'chvod HaAchsanya. So Toda, the Achsanya here, the entire community, all those who came in from far as well, to have an opportunity on Shavas Har B'Tammuz to really focus on the theme of the day. And especially when we start off not only our week, but when we're starting off 3 weeks of Bein HaMitzarim, right after hearing about Parshat Balak, hearing of Bil'am, who's caught Bein HaMitzarim, of Mish'ol HaKramim, hearing that we're supposed to feel literally the constraints, the national constraints during this time period, the time period between the siege around Yerushalayim and the ultimate destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So we're going to get started this morning by trying to think of those demuyot, the personae in Tanakh, who really cry out to us and try to elicit from us the responses and the emotional sentiments that we're supposed to be immersed in over the next few weeks. And therefore, I can't think of anyone more appropriate than Rachel Imenu. Because even though we know when Chazal speak about each one of the avot and imahot, we're going to hear and cry out in their words and the kinot that have been composed throughout the generations. We're going to cry out just as they did. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avram Avinu says, can't you have rachamim on the children just like I had rachamim? Can't you remember the zchut of Akedat Yitzchak? And Yitzchak is going to cry out and say, Hashem, I was the Akedah, I was willing to sacrifice myself, and that's zchut. Can you now have rachamim on Am Yisrael? And we know that these are perpetual cries throughout the generations. But Chazal, and we're going to see, based on the words of Yirmiyahu, tell us that there is one personality, one matriarch in particular, whose cries are not only going to be perpetual, whose cries are not only going to be extremely powerful, but whose cries ultimately are going to be the ones that are answered. And if we can appreciate a little more why Yirmiyahu Hanavi, over all the other personalities and characters in Tanakh, why he chooses to incorporate Rachel Mevaka al Baneha, particularly the tears of Rachel Imenu, then we'll be able to understand not just a little bit of this time period, but ultimately the path and the derech that we're all supposed to be pursuing over the course of the next few days and weeks. So in order to understand Rachel Imenu, as you know, we have to go back to the story in the Torah. So we're going to see Rachel and the development of the character of Rachel, particularly in Parshat Vayetze. And this parsha is a very interesting parsha, in that it's not only one Parshat HaShavua that we read over the course of a week, but it's also one complete parshiya. There aren't any parshiya breaks based on the Masoretic text. Noah parshiya ptucha, no parshiya stuma. From beginning to the end, the Torah is telling us, read straight through. This is one story where we're going to see, on one hand, beautiful chiasm. So looking at the sheets before you, you can see the structure of this parsha, which is in fact Parshat Vayetze, beginning with Yaakov departing, if you remember, from his bloodthirsty brother Esav. He departs and he sees angels along the way, the Sulam Yaakov, the angels who are ascending and descending. And Yaakov hears of the promises that Hashem has given him, that he will one day return to Eretz Yisrael, albeit now he has to run away from Esav. Yaakov runs away from Esav, from his brother, straight to the hands of mischievous Lavan. And we hear that the first few years of Yaakov's life are going to be very difficult. For, as we know, the first 7 years he is going to labor for his beloved Rachel, only to be duped by his father-in-law and then have to work an additional 7 years after Leah to now win Rachel's hand. And then after those 4 years, we hear of those 14 years, we hear of the birth of Yaakov's children. Immediately thereafter, there seems to be some turnabout, some significant change, because everything that wasn't working well for Yaakov initially is now going to be rather successful, whether it's that this time, despite his father-in-law tricking him over and over again, he is successful economically, and as we know, labors for money over the course of the next 6 years. Yaakov then escapes from Lavan straight back to Esav, so we have the reversal there of characters. And then Yaakov returns, and if you remember the very end of the Parshiah, Yaakov returns to Eretz Yisrael, and he sees Machane Elokim Zeh. He sees the group, literally, and the entourage of angels that have come to accompany him, Vayikrashim hamakom hahu machanayim. Just as he named the place Beit El at the beginning, Yaakov returns home to Eretz Yisrael. What a beautiful closure and what a beautiful chiasm. But the chiasm, as we know, also highlights the central climactic feature of the story, namely the birth of Yaakov's children. And this seems to signify the change in Yaakov's turn, his turn of luck. If for the first 14 years things don't seem to be going so well, the first stage of Yaakov by Lavan, we don't really hear of too many successes. It's going to be the second part of the stories that ultimately will not only bring Yaakov home, but will bring him home rather successfully. So we take a look now at the birth narrative, which, as we know, is the longest birth narrative that we have throughout the Tanakh, not only because there are 11 sons and a daughter that are born to Yaakov throughout this birth narrative, but also because there are stories that are going to be and dispersed throughout the story itself. So let's take a look at the birth narrative. And once again, we find chiastic structure. From the Greek word chias, meaning an X, we see the development of the story. The story begins with the birth of 4 children to Leah, followed by a Rachel story that doesn't end with birth. We then hear of the birth of 2 children to Rachel's maidservant Bilhah, followed by the birth of 2 children to Leah's maidservant Zilpah, then another Rachel story that also, ironically, does not end with birth, and then we have the birth of 4 children, and if we're looking carefully and are very textually sensitive to the structure, what would have been the perfect closure for such a birth narrative? Had we only had, by the end, the birth of 4 children to Rachel, that would have been perfect. And therefore, we're supposed to be sensitive. Wait a second. We're going to hear of, as we know, 3 children born to Leah and only 1 to Rachel. So something is supposed to not necessarily be sitting so comfortably by us, but already looking at the structure, we recognize that the Torah is giving us the answers within the story itself. The very fact that the birth narrative is, on one hand, going to change around Yaakov Avinu's career, but at the same time, more than any other character, is truly going to focus on Rachel Imenu, and not necessarily in such a positive light, tells us Darshini. It's time to open up the story and try to appreciate ourselves what in fact is going on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ignore the Christian chapter division, taking a look really at chapter 29, verse 31, which is where the birth narrative begins. Vayar Hashem kisnu'a Leah, vayiftach et rachma v'rachel akara. Notice the verb of ri'iyah. Hashem is going to get involved in Leah's life. Hashem sees that Leah is despised by Yaakov. Vayiftach et rachma. From here, one can clearly extrapolate that Leah was somewhat barren beforehand as well. God gets involved to open up Leah's womb, the Rachel akara, teaching us that Rachel's womb is still closed. And as depressing as this is, the Pasuk is already telling us not to worry. All Rachel needs is just like Leah. She needs Hashem to open up her womb, and then she'll also have children. Vatar Leah vateled ben, vatikra shemo Reuven. Now, if I would ask you, what is the meaning of Reuven, literally, what does it mean? Look, it's a boy. See, it's a boy. We're picturing blue helium balloons, maybe some cigars. Again, yes, it's a boy, Reuven. But then she adds what's known as a midrash shem. She offers her own interpretation as to this name. And even though she doesn't know, as we do, what the omniscient narrator of the Torah has told us, Vayar Hashem kisnua Leah, that Leah's child is in fact because of the involvement of Hashem, Leah recognizes it on her own. Amra ki ra'a Hashem bo'onyi. God has seen my oppression. Ki ata yehavani ishi. And now he has given me a child so that my husband will love me. And this is Leah's recognition. Immediately, Leah knows, I know I have this child. This child is the product of Hashem's involvement in my life. And as soon as we look at the words, because we're going to be sensitive throughout the ensuing verses as well, we recognize the interplay between Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, Hashem, versus Elokim. And we know this not only through various Midrashei Chazal, where we hear that Hashem symbolizes Midat Harachamim, Elokim, Midat Hadin, but actually we know this from the first 2 chapters of Sefer Breshit. Breshit Parak Aleph depicts an Elokim who creates the world, Elokim who's going to be involved in nature, Elokim who's going to rule on a universal plane. And then Perek Bet talks about a much more subjective story of creation, is now Hashem Elokim. And it's not just words of Asa and Bara, but Yitzira, Hashem forming, Hashem commanding Adam different mitzvot, whether it's pru or vu, or edu b'dgat hayam v'kivshua, whether it's to tell him mikol eitz hagan tochal, and not from eitz hadat. We know that the term Yud Kei Vav Kei is going to tell us and basically portray a much more involved action of Hashem, much more subjective approach, much closer connection. And that's exactly what Leah recognizes. Pasuk Lamed Gimel, Vatar o vateleben, Vatomer ki shama Hashem. Again, Leah says, I know this isn't just an act of nature. This is Hashem involved in my life. Ki snua anochi. Hashem saw that I was despised. Vayitein li gam et ze vatikra shemo Shimon. By the time she has a third child, ata hapam yelave ishi elai. Automatically, no, we can't play man on man anymore. This is now zone. My husband has to accompany me. Ki aladati lo shlosha banim al ken kara shemo Levi. Vatar od vateled ben. And let's recognize Leah's reaction to this fourth child. And she basically says, I don't even know why. Again, now my husband has to accompany me already after 3 children. So this child, hapam odet Hashem. I have no other expression other than to say, thank you, Hashem. Al ken kara shemo Yehuda vata'amod miledet. Leah, we see, one pasuk after the other, is immediately cognizant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement in her life. Let's take a look at pasuk Aleph of the next chapter, which tells us how Rachel is going to be responding to these re'iyot of Hashem and Leah's reaction to the re'iyot of Hashem. Vatere Rachel. Rachel observes. And what would we hope the pasuk tells us? Vatere Rachel. Rachel is responding to Hashem's Re'iyah, and she should recognize that she also should be somewhat involved in this Re'iyah of Hashem. But she doesn't see the Re'iyah of Hashem. Instead, Vatira Rachel kilo yalda Yaakov. All she sees is herself, or really, what? Her sister, that's right, and also what's lacking by her. Kilo yalda Yaakov atikane Rachel bachota, and that's why she's jealous of her sister, Vatomer el Yaakov, and therefore she goes to Yaakov immediately, Havali banim, give me children, ve'mayin metanochi, because if not, then it's as if I am dead. And what's interesting is that the Parshanim, Rashi, Ibn Ezra, the Targumim, all explain that, of course, she's screaming out of despair. But the Ramban points out, even if she's screaming out of despair, al derech hapshat amra Rachel Yaakov sheyitain la banim. She is basically making a demand of Yaakov. And the Ramban, whom we know, again, is not going to be, again, so reserved when it comes to criticizing, at times, the shortcomings of the Avot and the Imahot. He says, Sheiman Rachel, the very fact that Yaakov is going to be angry and the Torah does not pass any negative judgment of Yaakov tells us that Yaakov was correct in being angry at Rachel because she's demanding something. And to a certain degree, this seems to be her continuous behavior. Namely, when Yaakov first sees Rachel, we know the story, he comes to the well, Vayevk, and he cries. And Rashi tells us, because Yaakov is already anticipating what will be. Yaakov already sees that this story is not going to end up happily ever after, despite his dreams and certainly despite his wishes. But with regards to Rachel, we don't hear any response because Rachel sees the here and now. And Rachel, I can imagine, as a very young girl, as she's described as being Yefat Toar, V'tovat Mareh, she's beautiful. She's, I'm sure, the girl who walks around the Beit Knesset and everyone says, oh, she's so pretty, she's so pretty. One day, Gana, she's going to have, oh, such a wonderful, wonderful husband. And she's thinking to herself, yes, of course, Yaakov is here, he's going to marry me. And I get married, and as many young women think, I'm going to get married, and what will happen soon thereafter? Of course, I'm going to have children. And Rachel therefore makes demands of Yaakov. I don't understand. Why don't I have children? The Ramban continues. Aval sheyitpalel alaha ad sheyitain la banim al kol panim. And don't worry, Rachel was really demanding of Yaakov that he daven. She didn't really think that he had the power to all of a sudden provide her with the power of fertility, but she is still demanding that he pray, that he do whatever he can. Vim ayin shetamit atzma. Otherwise, she wants to kill herself. Bitzar dibra shelo kahogen bekinata. And notice the Ramban's terminology. She did something incorrect, and yes, we can understand it. She's in terrible pain, and therefore she's speaking from these sentiments of jealousy. V'chashva ki bavato ota, and she truly thought that because Yaakov loves her, yitaneh Yaakov is going to fast, v'yilbasak ve'ifer, v'yitpalel ad sheyula banim shelo tamut b'tzara. Yaakov will do whatever he has to do. He'll go to the kotel and he'll fast for 40 days, and he'll say Tehillim for 180 days straight. Yaakov will do whatever he can. But notice that this belief is embedded in Rachel's misperception of where children come from. She's convinced that Yaakov can somehow alternate the powers, the forces of nature to provide her with a child, in which case, as the Ramban continues and tells us, when Yaakov responds with anger, it's not to embarrass her. Rather, he wants to teach her something. He's telling her, who do you think I am? Do you think that I am in place of, and notice the terminology, Elokim. He doesn't say Hashem. He incorporates the term of Elokim. Rachel, do you think that's where children come from? Do you think children only come from Elokim? Do you think they come from the forces of nature? Do you think they really are embedded in the cycle of nature, that it's so automatic? You get married, you have children. Who do you think I am to be able to provide you with this? And in fact, Vayicharapho va'amar la ki hadavar biyad Elokim v'lo biyado. You're turning to the wrong direction. And therefore, as we continue the story, we're going to see this all the more. Vatomer, how does Rachel respond as a result? Gana, she then is going to give amati bilha boelaha vatelet al berkai v'ibane gam anochi mimena. And here I think that the Sforno is going to be based not only on the psukim as the Ramban, but on this pasuk as well. He says, why is Yaakov so angry? Alamra havali ki'ilu haya biyado lasot ze v'ka'as b'kinato lechvod kono. Yaakov was truly angry on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't think that God just works through nature. Don't think that it's as simple as coming and demanding that I do something and somehow try to alternate the forces of nature to a certain degree, like we just saw in this past week's parsha. Bil'am taking his nechashim, his maklot, feeling that through some power, yes, we can have an effect on what goes on around us. And what does Rachel say in the very next pasuk? Bo elamati. So I am going to give you my maidservant, v'ibane gam anochi mimena. Which reminds us, on one hand, of Sarah Imenu, who does this immediately. But even in Sarah's terminology to Abraham, Sarai tells Abraham, Ulai ibane mimena. I don't know. I don't control fertility. I don't even know if God is going to provide my maidservant with a child. Notice Rachel has a certain confidence. This is the way it should be. If I can't have a child, then my maidservant certainly will. ותיתן לו את בלהה שפחתה לאישה ויבוא אליה יעקב ותר בלהה ותלד ליעקב בן. Pasuk Vav, and we're going to see this depicted through the words and the naming of Rachel. Vatoma Rachel, Danani Elokim. How does she see this child? The child is the result of the judgments of God. V'gam shama b'koli v'yitin li ben al ken kara shemo Dan. Yes, magia li is the term that we would use in Hebrew. As I deserve this child, God judged me, and now I have a child. Vatar od vateled b'l hashevchat Rachel ben shini li Yaakov vatoma Rachel. Naftulei Elokim niftalti im achoti gam yacholti. Vatakrashmo Naphtali, and even though Naphtali is a beautiful name, notice the harshness of Rachel's words depicted in the pasuk. Kia, as she says, Naftule Elokim niftalti im achoti gam yacholti. I have contested with my sister, and I have surmounted. How does Rachel see having children? She sees it also as a contest, as a competition. How many children do you have? Oh, I have one more. That's right. Gana, one more. Gana, and I have surmounted. Now I can walk down the main street. Gana, I can walk down King George, Central Avenue. What's the main street here? Thank you. Ocean. I can walk down Ocean with a double stroller. Gana, now I have Dan and Naphtali. Gam Yacholti. And while we're reading the psukim, and we should be hurting inside, recognizing Rachel. Just turn. Don't turn to your sister. Don't turn to Yaakov. Who should she be turning to? Hashem. Vatomer Le'ah. In the meantime, we know Vatera Le'ah ki amda miledet. Le'ah responds to the fact that Hashem is not as involved. She is not having children. Immediately, she gives her shivcha zilpa to Yaakov. Vatomer Le'ah ba Gad. And how does Leah see these children? And we can understand that Leah already has 4 of her own, but Leah doesn't see this as judgment, as something that she deserves. A Gad is a luck. God is a matana, is a gift from Hashem. And the second child as well, she says, Ba'oshri, I now have a child with great happiness. Ki yishruni banot, vatikrat shemo asher. And in the middle of all this, we're going to hear another narrative of Rachel, one that reminds us of the first one, wherein she is turning in the improper directions. Let's take a look at the second narrative now, Pasuk Yudalid. Vayelach Reuven b'mei ketzir chitim, vayimsa dudaim basadeh. This in itself is interesting. Reuven, that child, if you remember, who Leah expresses is really the answer of Hashem, so that Ata Yehevani Ishi, you can only imagine the pressure that this Bechor already has, not only by being a firstborn, but now he knows that he is the child through whom his father is supposed to love his mother. That's a very difficult mantle to place on a child. And Reuven, therefore, goes out, even though, again, he is the Bechor of his father, going out to the field. He's not helping his father collecting wheat, but rather he's really a mama's boy. He's going out thinking of his mother. And knowing that his mother has not had children of her own in a while, he goes out and he collects dudaim. So if we turn the page again just for a moment, we want to see why he's collecting these dudaim. Why the Torah feels that it's important, even though the primary character of the story is going to be Rachel, we hear of the secondary actions here of Reuven. The Sfor note tells us these dudaim, these are fertility mandrakes. Vayimsa dudaim min esav tov heriach v'tov el hatolada. This is some type of fertility treatment. Till today, there are mandrakes that grow right outside of Beit Shemesh. People take them, they send them across, not just Eretz Yisrael, but the world, put them in potions, and try to help women as a fertility treatment. And the Ramban quotes the other Parshanim, the medieval commentators, who explain that, yes, there's something about this, whether it's Rashi, whether it's Onkelos, who says this is Yasmin, some type of therapeutic medicinal treatment for infertility. And that's why Reuven went out searching for these dudaim that he brings home to his mother. The Ramban explains, don't think that this is really such a potent treatment. People believe that it would lead to fertility, but more for psychosomatic purposes, because the mandrake itself was really a root, and the root of the mandrake looked like a mini human being. And picture a bulb with arms of the roots that come out and roots that come as if they're the appendages of the legs. That, the Ramban says, is why people believe that it had some type of potency, some type of power, ba'avor shetoldotam, and somehow linked to the ability to have children. And what does Reuven do with these dudaim? He brings them home to his mother, Leah. Vatomer Rachel el Leah. And what do these words remind you of? Tnina li miduda'e benech. She says, give me of your son's dudaim. Very reminiscent of the demand of Havali banim, tninali. And this time she doesn't just say, give me dudaim. She wants duda'e b'nech. Give me a little piece of what it means to have a child. Can I please just have? She doesn't actually even use the term as we see here. Gana ava, gana tnali. She demands it and says, but also please give me from duda'e b'nech. Every day he brings home little pictures from kindergarten. Can I have one of those pictures so that I can put it up on my refrigerator and say, you see, look at that, a little piece of what it means to have my own child. And we feel on one hand Rachel's distress, but at the same time we still feel, Rachel, dudaim are not the answer. This is not what is going to solve your problem. This is not changing your perspective. Recognizing that children don't just come from Elohim, but they come from Hashem. And the Ramban continues then to say, Chaval, hanachon ki ratzta behen lishtashea v'litaneg berechan. Really, Rachel deep down understood that this is not what is going to solve her infertility. She really just wanted to enjoy the fragrance. And therefore, there are some Parshanim that explain that this really wasn't even a fertility treatment, but rather an aphrodisiac. Ki b'tvilah nifgeda Rachel v'lo b'derech harefuot. The Ramban points out, please, no one think that really these mandrakes, that these dudaim can solve any problems. No, if Rachel, and soon she will be answered, and when you see that she is going to conceive, don't think that it came from these dudaim, but rather from a tfilot. Reuven hevi anfei hadudaim o hapri kidmut tapuchim v'hashoresh hu she'omrim alav hanashim sheyo'ilu lehirayon. It's not even the flower itself. Rather, as the Ramban said earlier, it's the root that provides. And if we look then at Rachel's words, not only does she remind us of her previous self, of Tnanadli, of Havali, but a little bit even of Esav. If you remember, when Esav comes home from the fields, what does he say? The exact same words. Gana Tnanli from, give me of the Nizir Adashim. And what happens? And Yaakov was willing to give him, but Esav has to forfeit something. What does Esav forfeit? Bechorah. Based on this, let's take a look at a very harsh Midrash Chazal. Chazal teach us in source number 7, when Rachel asks, or rather demands of Leah, Tznana li miduda'e benech, and Leah responds, Hama'at kachtech et ishi, it's not enough that you're already the primary wife, that you're the akeret habayit, that you're the beloved wife, that now you also want to be the mother, that you also want to da'e benech. And here Rav Yitzchak Arama points out that these are the two primary identities of a woman. That a woman is also a wife. She's an isha. She has her own persona. And it's not dependent always on being a mother. It's not. That's a separate aspect. She's created first as isha and only later as chava, as em kol chai. And Rachel doesn't understand that. Rachel doesn't understand that she has her own identity. And maybe if she did, she would strive a little bit more in the religious, spiritual direction of turning to Hashem. But comes Rabbi Shimon and says, because Rachel made this demand, a demand that reminds us of the demand of Esav, Lefi shezilzala batzadik, lefichach eina nechnasat imo b'kvura. Rabbi Shimon says, this is the turning point. Because of this demand and placing her trust more in mandrakes than in spending time with her husband, she's going to lose time with her husband. She won't be buried with Yaakov. But that's not the worst. Rabbi Elazar says, Zohiv Sida v'Zohiv Sida. What do you mean? This was a business transaction, just like the Yaakov Esav scene that we saw earlier. They both lost and they both gained. Zo nistakra v'zo nistakra. Leah hifsida dudaim v'nistakra shnei shvatim. Leah lost her dudaim, but as a result, she's going to have not just 2 shvatim, but the 2 tribes, the 2 children that we saw really Rachel should have had. That would have been the perfect closure for the chiasm of the story. The Rachel nistakra dudaim, and Rachel did receive something. She gains the dudaim, vehefsida shvatim ubechorah, playing off of Esav as well. She loses shvatim, she loses an opportunity to have children, to have the same number of children as each one of, again, as the major matriarchs. She could have and should have had 4 children, 4 sons, just like Leah. And she loses it as soon as she misdirects her trust, placing her trust in Dudaim instead of in Hashem, placing her trust in Elokim, in natural potence and potions and portents, instead of in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman basically puts them all together and transforms the story into a very tragic one. Zohiv Sida, Dudaim v'nistakra shvatim ukvu raimo. Rachel nistakra Dudaim, but what did Rachel lose all in this moment? Hevsida shvatim ukvu raimo. She lost all the long-term brachot. She lost everything because of her misdirected request. And maybe that's how we understand Leah. Leah is not adding salt to the wound when she says, Hama'at kachtech et ishi, but is rather trying to tell Rachel, have you lost the point? As the Ramban tells us, Hama'at mimech shetikli et ishi ki'ilu at ishto v'ani ha'ama. Rachel, do you notice your behavior? You're acting as if you deserve everything. That literally, hakol magia lach, that you're going to be the primary mother and I'm the maidservant. That you want to take things away from others. Instead of taking away from others, look towards yourself. Look how you can replenish yourself. Look how you can compensate for what you don't have by looking more, again, not at what others have, but perhaps what's lacking a little with you. And every time I teach this, I think to myself, oh no, B'mea ve'esrim be'ezrat Hashem, Gana, one day, Gana Rachel's going to come to me and say, Shani, what did you do? What did you do to my character? Gana, why are you depicting me like this? And I want to say, no, Rachel, really, it's not me. It's the Ramban, it's the Midrash. Look at Rabbi Shimon, look at Rabbi Elazar. But don't worry, because the psukim themselves are going to redeem Rachel. As we continue now with the story, what happens after this? The Dudaim, in fact, don't help. Rather, they help, again, Leah, by virtue of the fact that Leah recognizes that children aren't going to come from these Dudaim. Instead, Pasuk Tetzayin, Vayavo Yaakov min hasadeh ba'erev, Vatetze Leah likrato, Vatomer Elai tavo, Ki sachor sacharticha bedudae b'ni, Vayishkav ima balaylahu, Vayishma Elokim Eleah. And notice at this time it really is Elokim. It is the God of justice, the God of nature, who's going to respond to Leah. Vatar vatel Yaakov ben Chamishi. And Leah recognizes, yes, I know exactly why I have this child. This is not because God was super involved. No, but rather, Natan Elokim schari asher natati shevchati liishi. Because I did everything possible a priori to try to have children. I gave my maidservant, and she names this child Yisachar, and then her sixth child, Vadani Elokim Zevetov. This is an extra gift. Hapam yizbaleni ishi ki aladati lo shisha banim vatikra shemo Zevulun. Vachar yalda bat vatikra shema Dina. Leah now recognizes these are children that I worked really hard. Again, whether it's that I forfeited myself by giving my maidservant, or whether I forfeited Dudaim so that I could have time with my husband, she recognizes that she deserves these children. But how about Rachel? Pasuk Chavbet. Vayiskar Elokim et Rachel. And of course we're not surprised because Rachel never turned to Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, never turned to Hashem. And therefore it's Elokim, yes, it's the God of nature that is going to answer Rachel. Vayishma Elah Elokim, Vayiftach et Rachma. And now it's time. Now her womb is going to be open. Vatar vateled ben vatomer asaf Elokim et cherpati. Rachel's initial response to this child is, in fact, God has contained my embarrassment. Sof. Not mazal tov with a smile, mazal tov. Finally. Asaf Elokim et cherpati. And if the story would end here, then not only should she name her child Asaf, which is a beautiful name, but Rachel changes her perspective. I always imagine that I'm sure that when she first gave birth, she says, Asaf Elokim et cherpati. God, contain my embarrassment. Finally, this is what I deserve. And then the midwife places that child on Rachel so that she can begin to nurse her child. And as many young mothers do, and as many mothers, as soon as they see the child, what do? We do some strange things when that child is first in our hands, such as counting the toes, counting the fingers, even though the ultrasound already showed everything. But it's so miraculous. And this child that was growing inside of me is now in my arms. And Rachel, therefore, changes her perspective. She says, oh my gosh, What was I thinking? I was thinking that children come just because of nature. That Elohim responds simply based on our actions. I thought that this is all a very natural process, that Yaakov could somehow manipulate, that I can, if I go for sufficient IVF treatments and a fertility potence, that something is going to happen. And Rachel realizes when that child is in her hands that no, that children come from Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That children come from forces beyond us. And it takes us to recognize that, as Rachel does when she says, Yosef Hashem li ben acher. If I'm ever going to have another child, I know, Hashem, I know that it comes from you. It comes from Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, not from natural forces, but rather from your involvement in our lives. And that's why the pasuk immediately thereafter, Vahi kasher yalda Rachel et Yosef, vayomer Yaakov Lavan, shalcheni ve'elcha el makomi ulartzi. This is what wakes Yaakov Avinu up and says, okay, now it's time to get home. And Chazal explained, because he knew, Beruach HaKodesh, that he was going to have 11 children in Chutz La'aretz and 1 child born in Eretz Yisrael, but it doesn't say when Yaakov had his 11th child, did he say, okay, alarm clock, now time to go home? It's when Yaakov heard the name Yosef, Yosef Hashem li ben acher. He heard Rachel for the first time ever, recognizing Hashem's involvement in her life, that's what reminded Yaakov of Hashem's involvement in his life. That's what reminded Yaakov of God's promises to him and his own oath to Hashem, that if Hashem takes care of me and provides for me, I committed myself to God and I forgot about my commitments to God because God wasn't in my consciousness, certainly not in my lexicon, because it wasn't in Rachel's. And we know that Yaakov has such a beautiful, loving, symbiotic relationship with Rachel in particular. So when Rachel recognizes Hashem in her life, Yaakov does as well. And that's the turning point. Now that Yaakov recognizes Hashem, he sees Hashem everywhere. He sees Hashem in the success of the fertility of the various flocks. He sees Hashem as the one telling him, go back already. He sees Hashem and he's not worried about Lavan anymore and all of his guises and manipulation, because he remembers what Rachel said, Yosef Hashem li ben acher. And Rachel apparently learns this lesson. But as we know, even from this past week's Parsha, as Am Yisrael are upon imminent entrance to the land of Israel, they sin once again, and after taking so many steps forward in Parshat Chukat, Chet Baal Peor brings them all the way back to Chet HaEgel. So too, Rachel comes to this recognition, Yosef Hashem li ben acher. She sees Hashem involved in her life. She understands that no, you can't really explain anything simply based on natural circumstance. But now let's take a look at what happens soon thereafter. 5 steps forward and 3 steps backwards. V'Lavan halach legzoz et sono v'tignov Rachel et hatrafim asher lavia. Rachel steals her father's terafim, vayignov Yaakov et lev Lavan. And as we saw the symbiosis between Yaakov and Rachel with Yosef Hashem li ben acher, so to here, Rachel steals terafim from her father. Yaakov steals knowledge from her father. Ad bli higidlo ki boreachu, as he's going to run away without telling him. And Lavan, in hot pursuit of Yaakov, finally catches up to him and demands his terafim. Vayan Yaakov vayomer leLavan ki areti ki amarti pen tigzol penotecha mi'imi. Firstly, I left and I stole that information because I was afraid that you would claim ownership over your children and your grandchildren, which is in fact exactly what Lavan does. And with regard to your terafim, says Yaakov, go ahead, go and find them. No one here has them. Vayavo Lavan ba'oel Yaakov va'oel Leah va'oel shtei ha'ma'ot v'lo matzah. Vayetzel me'oel Leah vayavo ba'oel Rachel. V'Rachel lakhat hatrafim. V'tisimem b'char hagamal v'teshev alehem. V'yamashesh Lavan et kol ha'oel v'lo matzah. Rachel had taken the terafim, places them under the saddle of the camel, so Lavan doesn't find them. But when Lavan comes out, v'tomer elaviha al yachar b'nei Adoni ki lo uchal lakum mipanecha ki derech nashim li. Rachel is brazen enough to say, I can't get up right now to greet you because I'm experiencing my menses right now. V'yachapes v'lo matza et hatrafim. And the Parshanim ask, why did Rachel even take these trafim? So Rashi, teaching us a beautiful message of Rachel, says that not only was she leaving her father's home, but she also wanted to perform a little bit of outreach on her father. Lafrish et aviha me'avodat elilim hitkavna. Really, she took her father's little idols here of avodah zarah in order to prevent him from furthering his idol worship. But Ibn Ezra explains, if that's really the case, then what should she have done with them? She should have destroyed them, but she doesn't destroy them. And what are they really? He says they're bitsurat b'nei adam. And you can go to the Israel Museum because we found trafim by the ancient gate by Ashkelon. These swollen horses with swollen bellies. They literally look like, again, pregnant little human beings, and they were meant to absorb all different types of spirits. Lekabel koach elyonim. ויש אומרים שרחל גנבתם לבטל עבודת כוכבים מאביה, ואילו היה כן, למה הוליכה אותם עמם ולא תמנום בדרך? Why didn't she bury them along the way? והקרוב שהיה לבן אהב דדה מזלות ופחדה שאביה יסתכל במזלתה לדעת איזה דרך ברכו. And therefore he says it seems that Rachel took them because she believed in their power. She believed that they had some powers and that they were going to divulge their path and the direction in which they were running away. And therefore Rachel took them, but that means that Rachel still believed in them. That Rachel brought up in her father's home, now we understand a little more, doesn't see Yud-Kei Vav-Kei everywhere right away. She sees the powers of nature. She sees even the powers of magic. She sees other powers and strengths that we can attribute different circumstances in life to. And therefore she takes these trafim with her. And not only that, but what does she do with the trafim? The Ramban explains that yes, it was like a crystal ball. She really did believe that it could foretell the future, but maybe even more than that. If these trafim are little idols with swollen bellies, then she believed that if she would put them under the saddle while she is experiencing her menses, if they are under her infertile body, she still believed that maybe what would help her, not just Yosef Hashem li ben acher, but Yosef HaTrafim, maybe the Trafim will help me have another child. And we cry with Rachel and for Rachel. How could it be? You recognize the power of Hashem, but just like us, more than any of the matriarchs, more than any of the imahot, we relate most to Rachel. We call Rachel Mama Rachel. Sarah Imenu, we think of how she was willing to sacrifice herself, literally her future, the future of being a matriarch of Am Yisrael by offering Hagar to Avram Avinu. We think of Rivka, Vatelach Lidrosh et Hashem, and who as soon as she can conceive, Vayatar, there's Tfilah, and there's Drisha, they're seeking out answers from God. We see Leah, who is immediately cognizant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement in her life. And then we look at Rachel, and on one hand, we see Rachel, who really does come to a recognition of course, there's Hashem. But on the other hand, 4 steps forward, 2 steps back, I don't know. Maybe it really was because of the Trafim. Maybe really the Dudaim. We open up the newspaper. We experience different events in our own lives, and we wonder, does this happen because of God? Or maybe, because of, I don't know, human leadership? Or maybe it's a political happenstance? Or maybe it was really a military fluke? Or maybe it really is just, the Adam Smith cycle of capitalism? Who's to say that it's really Hashem? And the Torah tells us time and time again, don't just look at Elohim, don't look at the forces of nature. Look at Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. The Rashbam who tells us that it's really not just Trafim. Throughout Jewish history, Trafim are going to be related also to On, and to all different types of avonot, but all different types also of spirits that people believe. And maybe today it's no longer black magic or sorcery, but all different other aspects that blind us from recognizing that it's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei involved in our lives. And that's why it's Rachel. We take a look now at page 5, source 15. we see that it's Rachel then who's buried Baderech. It's Rachel who literally and figuratively is the Aim Haderech. The Aim Haderech in Hebrew, which means the crossroads. Rachel is always at the crossroads, always there to say, I don't know, is it Hashem or is it Elokim? Is it the forces of nature or is it something beyond? Rachel, who's always Baderech, she's in the process of recognizing, but isn't fully there yet. And therefore, when we hear that Yaakov and his family leave Beit El after finally burying the last of the vestiges of Trafim and Avodah Zarah that they have with them from the house of Lavan, Vayhi bakshota b'lidata v'tomer laha mi'aledet al tiri, ki gam ze lach ben. Remember, Rachel, you had so badly wanted Yosef Hashem li ben acher? Well, you have your other son. Vayhi b'tzeit nafsha ki meta v'tikra shemo ben oni. She calls out in pain. This is the son, as most Parshanim explain, the son of my oppression, Ben Sa'ari, Ben Avali, the son of my mourning. I'm not even going to be able to raise this child. But if we look a little more carefully, we see, as the Rashbam pointed out earlier, that what is Rachel saying? Oh my, I know why I'm dying. I'm dying because I put my trust, even though I said Yosef Hashem li ben acher, I put my trust in On and Trafim, which always go hand in hand, as we see in Sefer Shmuel. Va'aven u'Trafim, On and Trafim. She says, I'm dying because I placed my trust in the wrong direction, in the improper source of power. And it's Yaakov who names him Benyamin, the son of the south to where we're headed, the son of my strength and not the son of mourning and oppression. But also we know the Yamin is the sign of an oath, as we see in the story of Eved Avraham. Rachel says, I'm dying because of my sin. And Yaakov says, no, you're dying because of my oath. And this generally does not happen in a spousal relationship, wherein the wife says, it's my fault, and Yaakov says, no, it's my fault. Usually it does not happen that way, but here it does. Rachel says, it's because of me. She recognizes her improper placement of emunah. Hatrafim dabru avin. These terms go hand in hand. But not to worry. There's a little bit of a short-term tikkun. Her son Yosef is going to recognize and remember these stories. Her son Yosef, when the brothers are going to cry before him and say, oh no, please don't kill us. And Yosef says, what do you mean? Hatachat Elokim ani. I've learned the message that my father was trying to give my mother. I learned that nothing happens by what we would call chance or natural circumstances. Do you think that I'm currently the viceroy in Egypt providing for you economically in order to ensure your survival simply by chance because you happen to sell me down here? Hatachat Elokim ani. You think it was all Elokim? You think this is a natural circumstance? This is anything but natural. This is clearly the hand of God. And notice that it's not by chance then that Yosef is going to get married to a Bat Potiphera Kohen On and have 2 children of his own, who he is going to recognize in fact come from God. That is the short-term tikkun of Rachel through her son Yosef. But what we're here to discuss is the long-term tikkun, because that's what we remind ourselves of throughout the entire year, but particularly from now, through Tisha B'Av, through Yamim Noraim, as we sing the song, but we read the Haftarah, particularly on Rosh Hashanah, when we finally are able to internalize the message of what it means, that it really is Hashem who is involved in our lives. Rashi explains that when Yaakov was bidding farewell and asking Yosef to bury him in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, he had to explain to Yosef why Rachel isn't buried there. I buried Rachel baderech mi Padan Aram vekbera sham. And Rashi says, because I knew I didn't even take her corpse with me. I buried her baderech, because Rachel is going to symbolize to everyone what it means to be baderech. She is part of a process. Rachel doesn't recognize, like Leah does right away, that it's always and truly HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore we need the voice and the cries and the message of Rachel. Shetehei le'ezra lebaneha kshegale otam nebuzar adan vayu ovrim derech sham. It's going to be Rachel, who Yirmiyahu Hanavi quotes and says, Rachel mevakal baneha. She's going to cry a bechi of tamrurim, not only bitter cries, but a tamrur is a sign, as we use today for a traffic signal. Rachel is going to show us the way with her tears. She basically is going to stand before God, and let's take a look at what the Midrash tells us. She stands before God in source number 24, Bo Tosha'a, Kavtza Rachel imenu. As the first Abba, the Charashu Masker, the artisans in 597 BCE are going to be taken to exile to the northeastern lands, and they're going to pass by Kever Rachel, whether that's in the areas of Beit Lechem Yehuda, or whether it's in the areas of Har Ephraim. They're going to go by, and out of all the personae that Yirmiyahu could have chosen to scream and cry to Hashem for mercy, Yirmiyahu chooses the character of Rachel. And the Midrash says, as if Rachel is going to then jump up to Hashem and say, Ribono shel olam, galui lefanecha sheYaakov avdecha, avani avayit teira, v'avad b'shvili la'aba sheva shanim. Yaakov loved me and worked for me for 7 years, and when he finished those 7 years, my father decided to switch me. B'shvil achuti, v'uksha elai hadavar ma'od, and you can imagine how difficult that was for me. So I told my husband, and we had special simanim. Beni uvein achuti shelo yuchal lavi lachlifeni v'richamti al achuti. But last minute, I had mercy on my own sister so that she wouldn't be embarrassed. V'la'erev chalfu achuti lebali umasarti lachuti kol hasimanim. And in the end, I divulged these signs to my sister. And this way, again, not only that, I made sure to accompany my sister the whole time, shelo yakir lekol achuti, so that Yaakov would not even recognize her voice. And Hashem, notice what I did. I was not jealous of my rival at that moment, because I did not want her to be embarrassed. So God, why are you so jealous of all the rivals that Am Yisrael are bringing into the Beit HaMikdash right now? Why are you so jealous of all the forms of idolatry? Look at what I did for my sister, which isn't even as natural a love as a parent for a child. But this midrash always bothered me a little, because we don't see within the text itself Rachel divulging any signs to Leah. What does this mean? Rachel mevakal baneha me'ana linachem al baneha ki einenu. And I picture Rachel truly crying before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, saying, Hashem, I don't understand. You're the one who taught me the hard way. I died for this message of what it means that a relationship with you is not a relationship with din. I learned through my own death that children, a relationship between parents and children, is anything but natural. And if that's the case, Hashem, I understand. Am Yisrael sinned. Yes, you should destroy them. You should exile them. But that's not the relationship that you told me about. You said that there's a relationship of Yosef Hashem li ben acher, that we shouldn't be able to explain everything in this world simply based on natural phenomenon and din and justice, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a relationship with a child supersedes all that. A relationship with a child does not make sense according to the system of justice. A relationship, the very fact of having children doesn't work b'derech hateva. And therefore Rachel cries, and she says, Hashem, I'm here at the crossroads, and I never made it. I never recognized, as Leah did, as Sarah, Rivka did, I never recognize how deeply involved you are in our lives. But if that's the case, Hashem, me'ana lihinachem al baneha ki einenu, then where are my children? And Hashem says, you're right. Yesh sachar lepulatech, not only your pu'ula of being willing to forfeit your signs to your sister, being willing to wait until now Yaakov is going to work for you again, being willing to place your wedding dress on hold for a few days. No, Rachel, me'ana lihinachem, yesachar lepulatech, your pu'ula of finally recognizing that children come from Hashem, of appreciating that a relationship that Hashem has with Am Yisrael, like with a child, cannot be explained through fertility treatments, cannot be explained through political happenstance. That's the reason. Yesachar lepulatech num Hashem v'shavu me'eretz oyev. V'yesh tikva lacharitech. And Rachel, you should know that there's hope even for you. That you're going to get there. You're going to get one day. You're going to get to Hebron. You're going to get to the end. Yesh tikva lacharitech. But you know the real hope for you? The real final tikkun is when your children will stop being baderech. Is when your children won't need galut after galut from a country to country to be strewn about to recognize that their existence is nothing short of miraculous. One day, v'shavu vanim legvulam. And that's why the Malbim explains that Rachel isn't just crying for her literal children of Yosef and Binyamin, of Ephraim and Menashe. She's crying, interestingly, for the children of Yehudah as they're going into exile. She's crying for all of the children who recognize that our existence, our relationship with God, is a relationship not of Elohim, but of Hashem. On a very personal note, I remember, and I think about Rachel Imenu, particularly during this time period. During this time period where we wonder, really, Hashem, we're doing this again. We're starting the 3 weeks again. I remember the same time period last year. Really, is fasting today and fasting in 3 weeks from now, and I'm not laundering and not eating meat, is that really going to make a difference? If I mourn enough, is it going to make a difference? And what Chazal tell us is cry. Cry the tears of Mama Rachel, of Rachel Imenu. Cry the tears that show that you understand that the only way to foster a relationship and to affect change in that relationship is realizing that it comes from a unique dynamic between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I remember when I got married as one of 8 children, I also thought, going to get married, yes, one child after the other. Baruch Hashem, had a few children in a short amount of time, and then got pregnant and wasn't able to hold the pregnancy and miscarried the child. And I remember thinking, what? Children, they're supposed to just come naturally. And we're women, yes, they're supposed to develop inside of us. And it takes a little while sometimes till we realize, particularly through children, that children are anything but an expression of nature. That children are anything but a manifestation of Hashem's true involvement in our lives. The conception, the birth, every stage of raising a child reminds us of Hashem's involvement with us. And therefore, again, it's these tears that we cry with Rachel, realizing and recognizing that we're the children of Hashem. I will tell you that Baruch Hashem, after that miscarriage, we had another daughter, and you can only guess, what did we name her? Rachel. She's our Rachel. The Malbim tells us this is a microcosm of the story of all of Am Yisrael. We turn to Rachel as the mother at the crossroads because we're on the crossroads. Because we always straddle between opening up whatever it is, whether it's Ynet or Arutz Sheva. How are we going to understand what's going on in Israel, in the world today? Don't just think about it through the eyes or the colors of Elohim. Think of it through the glasses of Yosef Hashem li ben Acher. Lefichach, says the Maharal, nikbera Rachel baderech. Shem hayta nikbera b'ma'ara, lo haya etzel Yisrael shehem begalut shelehem, koach hamekabetz hama'acherotam. We need Rachel to unify us, to remind us on one hand of our shortcomings, but to remind us that we're still part of a process in which we all partake. V'lachein Rachel shenikbera baderech. Rachel can say, I'm there with you. You share my genetic makeup. I also straddle back and forth between a true God consciousness in my life versus explaining everything in some other fashion. And therefore it's Rachel who asks Rachamim, Had shiyu Yisrael mekubatzim legamrei. And had Rachel, the Akeret Habayit, not been buried baderech, kvar nechluku Yisrael chas v'chalila, v'lo hu yatzla mod koach mekabetz u'masefet Yisrael. Had we not had Rachel to remind us of this common denominator that we all have to unify us, then we perhaps would still be baderech. and not necessarily have the promise of Vishavu Banim L'Gvulam. It's Rachel who's Baderech, who reminds us that when one day we come back, we're going to come back to a state of her children, to the bracha of Hashem to her child, Binyamin. LeBinyamin Amar Hashem Yishkon Lavetach Alav Chofef Alav Kol Hayom Uven Ktefav Shachen. Binyamin's bracha is one which tells us he's the tikkun for Benoni. He is the one who reminds us that Hashem is truly involved in our lives. Between the hills of Binyamin and Yerushalayim, in the basic atmosphere, not only in Eretz Yisrael, but in the heart, in the makeup of Am Yisrael. And therefore, this is the time where we begin to cry, not with Rachel, but we begin to cry the same tears as Rachel Imenu. We hear how she cries for our struggles. And the only way that we will make it back is if we can relate to those tears and Be'ezrat Hashem, continue in the path of the Bechi of the Tamrurim, following those signals so that we will all merit Vishavu Me'eretz Oyev, Vishavu Banim L'Gvulam this year, Be'ezrat Hashem.